Alright, that's going. Week 9's going. Oculus is going. Everyone's back together again. No Creative Cloud, you don't have to join in. And I'll bring up the Spout receiver. And this is just a way to make sure that I'm sending out some frames. Right? This could be any of your VJ software, Macs, processing. This is just proof. This is like a little monitor tap, video tap into my graphics card, which apparently my graphics card is not being tapped into too well. Yay, we're all back. Alright, let's go back to that example level for Simple Spout. And as I said before, it doesn't really have any settings. It just has this Simple Spout actor. Hit play. There we go. And let's go back over to the Spout receiver. And you see that we're getting video frames from somewhere. We don't really know. There's not really much control over this. It's like underneath or something. I think this is floor. This goes on for forever. Anyway, so Simple Spout, obviously, I'm not selling it very well because there's a better way of doing this, and that's about actually sending these actors for Spout receiving and Spout sending, so that it's a specific thing. And if we come back over to the levels and we do Spout, say send, and this is a blueprint. It has some exposed variables. Now I'm going to be able to give my Spout a name. It's named Bob. It's hi Bob. I'm Bob, a Spout sender, and this is, I have it checked, meaning it's on, and it's rendering to a texture file, and I'm actually doing, I can either render from a camera location or the viewport. For right now, I'm just going to say whatever I see in my viewport is what I'm going to send to Spout, okay? And which is going to be where this camera is, because this camera is set up as what is see? Cool. So this is my viewport, and we go over to Spout. There's something there. Let's move this over. Oh goodness! I didn't know I was doing the 3 window thing still. Don't do those both together. You can't do 3 windows. You could do. I've done 5 spouts out, but that's replacing doing the rendering inside your multiplayer thing.
You don't actually have the views going in front of the other.
No, you see them in your other software instead, and that's what I was being. I was neglecting my poor computer and sending out 3 viewports going to Spout. That's user error. But if I come up with something cool, I'm taking credit for it. Alright, Spout one more time. Prove this works. Play. And then Shift F1. There it is. See? 60 frames per second. This is probably running 120 frames per second. This is just Spout just capped at 60 frames. And then if I move around, you can see that it updates. Ready? Alright, great. So, in the same way, if I put in multiple Spout senders, I'm going to hold down Alt, click, and then now I have duplicated this. And then I give this guy a unique name. Let's see, this is going to be Bill. Alright. So we're now going to Bob and Bill. Alright. I'm still just only going to 1. Great. And I have Bill. and I have Bob. Let's go select files and Bill. Oh, I think they're in the same location. Anyway, I have, what I'm trying to get to is that I have, oh, that's because I only have, I'm rendering from the viewport. Thank you. So I'm rendering from the viewport, and this is just wherever my camera is. And this can be very simple, but if I want to do multiple, I need to actually render from a texture render target, which I think should be where these are. Let's see. Let's see if that's a texture render target. So that's a texture render target. This is a what's called a scene capture 2D. And it's just a camera that renders to a texture. It's how you do like mirrors and like security footage, just like that. Great. And let's make these look at different things so we can tell them apart. And so this scene captures. This spout sender is getting from one render target. Let's find that render target and duplicate it. Great. Let's save. Target 2D. And this is getting it from the other render target 2D. Then we have two screen captures. One is going to render target 2D. The other one's going to the other one. So each, see how these are paired together? The camera, it's going to a texture that's saving here in the content browser. This texture can have allocated to it various resolutions. By default, 1024 by 768. And then that texture is being sent to a spout sender. These things can be anywhere in the world. These are not receiving or sending data. They're just blueprints that are connecting the cameras, video textures, and the spout code. So now, if I go back to this guy, we have actually that camera angle, right? And Bob, Bill, and Bob. There we go. So it's a named render space, and so in like Max or whatever, you have to say receive spout Bob, receive spout Bill, and then oftentimes what I do is I take all these different cameras and I kind of stitch them together to make one video texture that I can send out to a media server software or something like that. If you think this is cool, but you don't want to keep on doing all this stuff on one computer, you want to go to another computer and do like VJ special effects. There is a ways of doing this, sending this over Ethernet by using TCP Spout. There's also a TCP Siphon, so if you're on Mac as well. This is actually a way of getting graphics from a PC to a Mac and a Mac back to a PC over the Wi-Fi, or better, probably over a router. So like this is showing these are going back and forth to each other using Spout and TCP Siphon, and you're sharing graphics between two computers. Should you want to, not leverage all one graphics card. And this is free for you guys to download. There is now NewTek, which is an old, kind of a really established broadcast hardware provider, has now created an actually industry standard for networked video called NDI, and this has an Unreal plugin as well. So this is probably, if you're going to go into more traditional forms of media, this is the new way that's supported for doing video textures over Ethernet. But like Siphon's cool because Siphon was a project by an IDM alum. It was like his thesis project here. So that's why we like to talk about like the Siphon and Spout stuff. It's a New York's own. IDM zone. Yeah, IDM, yeah. Anton Marini, otherwise known as Vade. And okay, so that's what I want to show you guys about cameras real quickly. I'm going to talk about the how to blend between different animations on the fly. So if you're doing some sort of interactive, what's that mean? Cool. Anyway, So, if we wanted to say like, oh, I have a character doing one dance, and if a person appears, or if we have tracking and stuff like that, we want to do another one. We want to be able to procedurally blend between these animations, not just switch animations on a cue. So that is a process called, it's called state machines. What's also great about this is that we can blend between a live performer and canned animation, so that if something breaks, we hit a button and it goes to another thing, and no one knows something happened, and which some people are scared about. So I'm going to show you guys how to make state machines and in the animation blueprint, and then how to trigger them in a regular blueprint. I don't know if I have any people now, so let's go ahead and bring in a skeletal mesh. I'm going to import from another project, and I'm going to bring in this guy right here. No animations, just the skeletal mesh. That's fine. Cool. And then let's make a folder for animations, keep them all together. That's not high school animations either. Cool. And then we're going to import. I have some folder of animations that we did in our studio here. And he is there, 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 there. All right, import all of those. I don't want to bring in the mesh again. I already have it. But I do want to make sure that they're all attached to the same skeleton. Great. I've already trimmed them so that the current animation length is fine. And it's going to kind of start chopping through all those keyframes. Each one of these is like 3 minutes long. Chup, chup, chup. As performed by our friend Robert. And as cleaned by our friend Kat.
Woo.
The Moringa is so good. He does a really good job.
Yeah, mine was amazing.
Just can't wait to show it to you guys.
Yeah, if you guys ever want to jam out and do 8 hours a day with me, just let me know. You can do that. Yeah, what are you going to do?
Well, we'll talk about that later.
No, I wasn't going to let you do my stuff, please. Awesome.
She just want to make sure that you guys had like suffered, you know? It's important to suffer for your art.
For your art.
Suffer for your art.
You need artists
That could be
suffering.
That could be the next class. Suffer for your art. Right? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the syllabus would be like. But I think it's probably a 7-week class, or maybe it's like a Saturday.
You have to hold every reference book that you've ever mentioned for like an hour.
Yeah. That's like an IT project generator. All right, so here is our. He's like doing these little circle dances around. These get really great.
We're gonna have so much fun documentation for you guys next week.
Do
it after class.
All right, so he's dancing around. We have his footwork. This is not playing. There we go. Look at him dance. Look at him dance. What's up? All right, so we're going to create an animation blueprint. We know that interactivity is the rules about interactivity are done in actor blueprints and such, and animation blueprints are the rules about kind of how animations are blended and used. Okay, so I'm going to right-click on the skeleton, and we've done animation blueprints before when we use both perception neuron and iKinema, ABP, and we open it up, and it has basically the pin to the final animation. What is this final animation? I don't know. It could just be circle dance. Right? So this is our animation blueprint. It is that one animation. But we're going to create a state machine. And then we're going to create a couple of states. All right, so here is our entry point. We're going to usually start off with sort of the default state you want it to be. Usually it's an idle, but for us, we're going to put the circle dance. All right, I'm going to kind of bring in all these. All right, and then there's a special node called a conduit, which is not a state, which just means anything can pass through it. It's a way of connecting these things so that I'm not saying line here, line there for each one. Just we're all connected to the conduit. It was actually one of the contributions of the guy who taught me how to do mocap and Unreal to the engine. Here we go, conduit. And so now the first thing is going.
Raider?
No, A. Thomas Goldberg of EA Games. Okay, so our first thing will always be our default is a circle dance, and then from there it goes to conduit, and conduit goes back to it. Then the same thing for footwork. I'm just not doing stuff right. Let's zoom in. That is zoomed in. Let's go out and back in. There we go. There we go. And back the other way. All right, so obviously all these things can happen, but how are we going to trigger them? Right now we just have some names of dances. I'm going to do a little bit of coding called or a little bit of a blueprint methodology called an enum.
You don't know what an enum is?
So this is an enumeration. You want to elaborate on the enumeration?
Yeah, so enum comes, or enumeration is like a pretty standard type that comes in most programming languages. Type meaning like string or an integer or float, and it's just a way of letting a variable be one of X number of defined states. So let's say you have an actor, its enum could be dance, and then the dance would either be one of the 4 predefined dances that Todd is setting up right now.
So I'm giving basically all these things are just text names that really have no meaning yet to the engine. I'm giving them a slot that I can flip. All right.
And you can kind of treat them just like you would an int or a float. You
These are totally
them,
yeah.
you assign them to things, etc.
All right. And so I've created it, and it's something that will be found inside my blueprint. I showed you my assets right here, right? These are my my animations that are part of my blueprint. But I also have some variables. I need to go ahead and make a variable for that enum. So this is enum. And then I can actually, when I've created this enum male, it's actually a variable type now. Enum male is now a type. Okay. So there's my different text boxes. That's 0, 1, 2, and 3 basically. Cool. So now I can do a bunch of conditions about what is the enum that goes to these things. So what is the we default to entry. That's great. So let's just go through here and think about the logic of these rules. Okay. So what can go to a conduit? Or I'd say let's start the neutral spot. Conduit. Double click on it, and there's the rules about how we transition. Yes, I always want conduit to transition. That's fine. Let's go back out. And then what is the rule for the conduit making it to male footwork? Well, that's the arrow pointing to male footwork. Double click on that transition. And it's actually, the rule is that my enum is going to equal footwork. Great. And let's just do that for all these then. Okay, so we know that merengue is going to equal merengue. Equals merengue. So this is a conditional, right? These are bools, reds are bools.
So Todd, just to clarify for everyone, you're saying like merengue equals merengue. You're saying the merengue value of the enum which
equals
is just a string that he came up with, which could be anything, equals
the merengue value animation.
Yeah.
Right here. So I'm associating this data type with the actual animations themselves. And while this might seem like one of the biggest learning curves we've gone through, this is actually one of the most used techniques from the students in this class, especially when they go off into the wild world. All right.
Wild world.
The wild world. And equals. This was to male circle dance, and it goes back to male circle dance. So I think I did all 4. That's great. And what are the rules for going back? Well, the rules for going back are always that you can always go back to the conduit. You can always pass through it to the next phase. Great. Great. All right, so let's take it for a little spin. No errors anymore. Looks like we got everything locked up. And if we go over to this preview editor, see he's doing circle dance now. If I do footwork, he transitions to footwork. Salsa, transitions to salsa. Merengue, he transitions to merengue. So you can imagine we hit events for these things and they blend. But I told you we were going to do it a little bit more smooth than that. If I just click on the transition and go over the details, here's where the duration of my transition and what kind of curve it is. I'm going to do all of them at the same time. All right, these are all the ones that are going to the animations themselves. And let's take like 10 seconds. And now let's give it a spin. Circle goes to footwork and it blends in. Salsa blends in. See that? And you can mess around and have unique curves, and each one could be like maybe a linear works better for that first one, which was footwork. Because circle really seems like it's going to be in a wider range. Maybe I don't want it to be a cubic, which is a really logarithmic curve. I might want it to be just linear for that one. And then my circle to my footwork might be a little bit more natural that way. Cool. So let's just tie it to a blueprint so we can put it on Keypresses. And then that's what we're doing for today. All right, so done with that. And we have an animation blueprint. So let's make a blueprint for our character. An actor blueprint. And with my skeletal mesh selected, I can bring it in and it'll give it the name of the skeletal mesh, context sensitive. There he is. And if we look at the details, it says over here on the right, what is the animation blueprint? Well, we just made it, and it's called ABP male. And now we'll see the circle dance. Right? Cool. So for my skeletal mesh, I'm interested in this one instance of it that is an animated instance, Enum instance. And I need to get into the animation blueprint. These are 2 different blueprints, right? They need to communicate to each other. And in this case, we're going to do, for the first time in a tutorial, we're going to cast. And casting is a universal term?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so casting is something, again, this happens in pretty much like all programming languages, and whether it's more traditional like Python or Java, or node-based like Unreal or Maximus P, and it's basically taking one primitive type like an enum or a float or an integer and casting it as another one. So one thing to keep in mind, if you have a float value and you cast it as an integer, you are risking data loss because it's just going to throw out whatever the decimal value is. But it's also a way to take an integer and make it a float by just adding 2 decimal points. Typically.
And in the blueprints, I often talk about casting just like in a movie. Like we want to be able to get properties from these other blueprints, and so we have these 4 animations in the animation blueprint, and we want to cast this animation blueprint so we get those 4 animations. Just the same way you cast Tom Cruise your movie to get that smile and that amazing acting ability and the crooked nose. So I'm going to go from here and say cast to my ABP male, and just go ahead and do it at the beginning. I just always want to be able to get in there. You can imagine that you maybe only sometimes want to get in there slightly. And now this is basically bored a hole into that other blueprint, and I can get all the data out from here. And I just want to get the different enum states. So we want to set my enums, right? So let's do 4 of these. And each one needs to be able to attach to the animation blueprint. And we start off with circle, so let's switch then to footwork, and then switch to salsa, and let's switch to merengue, and then we'll put it on numbers, so input, let's just say 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's throw it into the world with all the spoutness that's happening.
The wild world.
The wild world of spoutness. It's very monochromatic. And let's play. All right. So here we are, circle dance, and I press 2. Oh, well, you know what I didn't do? You can't get. It doesn't. Yeah, it's not getting any data. Only the level blueprint by default can receive keypresses. It's just saying I want to auto receive input from player 0. You can also do that on begin play to say input, enable input for player 1. Either way is fine. I just like the checkbox. Print, circle dance. There we go. So these are events. These are like the hipster motion detection that Kat did the other week. Boom. Oh, we saw something. Let's switch the thing. Let's switch the thing. Let's switch the thing. Right?
Yeah, just like how Todd's using like 1, 2, 3, 4 key presses. This could be triggered by someone walking by and you're capturing that motion on a webcam. This could be triggered by someone selecting a color in like a tablet interface.
Cool.
So yeah, so my storybooker Team Brown, you know, if like the monster is coming out and you want your actor just like to respond and tell them like, look out, help me or something. That would be a cool way to do it.
So yeah, I know there's a lot, and definitely if you want to do it and you want to sit with me, more than happy to help guide through this. But I think this is definitely a really cool way for doing some interactivity with all these animations that we're making in the mocap space. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, try to see if I can cover the